All right, look, if you've seen the episode title, should I live stream my podcast too? Honestly, spoilers, the answer is maybe. The answer is maybe. So if you don't want to listen anymore, that's all right. You can just go and check out the live stream. Oh, wait a second. No, I've not done one. But why didn't I do one? Well, that is the very, very topic. Here today on the Podcast Accelerator with me, Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy and CEO and co-founder here at Rebel Base Media, where we make all sorts of podcasting tech goodness, including, of course, Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host. It's podcasting, Jim, but not as you know it. It's stress-free podcasting. It's people that actually care about your podcast and aren't going to talk to you like a fool because we believe in you as a person. That is Captivate.fm. Does what it says on the tin. World-class podcast hosting, analytics, and marketing. Go and check it out. 7 days free at Captivate.fm. Now, we are going to talk about live streaming in just 1 second. Of course, we're going to dig into should you or should you not, or is there a middle ground somewhere, some way, somehow, around live streaming that they're a podcast of yours. We are going to talk about that in just one moment. But before I do that, just a little heads up that, of course, the team at AWeber are still supporting me and countless other podcasters. Chris and Brandon and the team over there are just absolutely wonderful at what they do. They make sure that every time I send an email to let you know that this episode has been released, that it gets to your inbox. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, but it's really difficult. So seriously, you need to be engaging with your audience, and I truly believe that email marketing is the firmest, finest way of doing that. So please go and check AWeber out today at markasquith.com/AWeber. Okay, this question came up during my Podcast Accelerator private mastermind from my friend Stephanie Lee, the specialist in becoming comfortably uncomfortable. And having experimented with live streaming for my podcast, I've got a few thoughts on whether or not you should live stream your podcast. Now, I was live streaming the 7-Minute Mentor over to my Facebook page. I think I've just headbutted the microphone. Welcome to the world of a pro podcaster, guys. Like I said, I was live streaming the 7-Minute Mentor years ago. Just basically, I was doing this, recording this, and then like top and tailing it with a little bit of, hey guys, look, I'm live. It's me. I'm in the studio. I'm going to be recording episode 26 of the 7-Minute Mentor in 3, 2, 1. And then I'd take a bit of banter back and forth, before the session, after the session. And it was all right. It was all right for reach. But that's the kicker, all right? It's the reach thing. Like, why are you doing this? Well, let's just distill it. Theoretically, you're doing this because you think it will get you more listeners, or because you want to engage with the community in a live scenario, or because ultimately you think it will increase your exposure. But honestly, my thoughts on this are a little bit mixed. Now, when I did this, yes, I got some people tuning in, and yes, I realize it's a consistency play. You turn up every single time you record, and you do it, and that's all well and good. But I think the challenge with this turns into more of a goals question. Like, what are you trying to achieve with your podcast? So the way that I answered this when I was talking to Stephanie about this was, well, look, if your goal is to build your email list or to sell things, then yeah, all right, live streaming your podcast is probably decent. And forget the purists who say, well, that's not a podcast because it's not delivered by RSS, right? No one cares about that. Ultimately, what we're talking about here is increasing audience exposure. And sure, there will be people in your Facebook stream, and you can pre-market to these by setting up a pre-launch, marketing that, and maybe retargeting it afterwards with some ads. There will be people on your Facebook feed that don't listen to your podcast. So if your goal is to do something, and your metric, your key performance indicator, your KPI, in your brand, in your business, in whatever you're doing podcasting for, is to generate product sales or affiliate signups or trial signups or email list signups, lead magnet signups, then yes, I think that's great. I think live streaming your podcast is a great idea. I also think it's a great idea if you just want to connect with the community. Like, for example, like when I was doing it with the 7-Minute Mentor, I knew there were people that would still listen to the episode. So there was people like Raf and Felicia and Annette who would still listen to the episode, but that would also tune into the live stream if it was on their radar, because actually they want a bit of banter back and forth at the beginning and a bit of banter back and forth at the end, right? So that's fine. It's community building. However, if your goal is to sell sponsorship or to build your download, so if you care about building your downloads time after time after time, day after day, episode after episode, to get, to whatever, to generate sponsorship, to, for whatever reason that you want to build your downloads, then I think that live streaming it is probably not a great idea because it dilutes the potential audience, in my view. Sure, you'll get people exposed to your podcast who won't be exposed to the podcast ordinarily, seeing this and thinking, oh, okay, Marco's got a podcast, I'll go and check it out. But then wait a sec, why would I need to have just watched a live stream? So that's not going to help me if my goal is to build downloads. Now, that's not to say that live streaming doesn't have a place in that marketing strategy, but what I would personally look at doing is that if I wanted to build my podcast downloads, what I would be tempted to do is actually do a live stream before I record and give people the date on which I'm going to release this episode. So have a little bit of back and forth and say, look, guys, actually, I'm going to record episode, what are we on? Episode 81 of the Podcast Accelerator podcast. We're going to talk about this. Is live streaming good for your podcast? If you've got any questions, do you know what? Ask them now. I'll answer them. I'm going to be online for 15 minutes. Ask them and we'll answer them now. And then I'll also give you a shout out in the actual podcast episode, which you can get by going to your podcast app of choice and choosing to tune into the Podcast Accelerator. So what we're trying to do there is migrate someone from being a live stream viewer over to actually being a listener to the podcast. Can you see the difference between that and live streaming as you're recording, which, as I said, is great for community building and for if you're maybe building your email list as your sole goal. But if your downloads are the things that you need to focus on, then I would do it slightly differently. I would use live streaming as a precursor or as a little extra benefit, added value to say to people, look, here's how you listen to podcasts. This is not the content of the episode. In fact, I'm just about to record that episode, but I will do a short Q&A on this. All right. So this is I think is where podcasters start to maybe just get a little bit more strategic in their thinking. Rather than just saying, ooh, live stream, I can press this button and go live. Why don't we think it through a little more? All right. Why don't we do a little bit more with it? I think that's the key thing. All right. So that's what I'd suggest with that one. Just consider where live streaming may or may not fit in your podcast marketing strategy. Don't just do it because you can. All right. Let me know what you think on that. That might be controversial. Hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Asquith. Just let me know what you think of this. Just seriously, if I'm wrong, if I'm right, if I'm spouting rubbish, just let me know because I'm really keen to discuss this. I think it's fantastic to be able to dig into what's working for podcasters in podcasting right now. So give us a shout. I'm always around at Mr. Asquith on the old Twitter. And thank you so much for joining me. Tell any of your podcasting friends, anyone that's thinking about starting a podcast or who has a podcast already, let them know that this show exists, all right? Maybe send them the trailer. Send them to the top of my my Twitter feed because that is where my trailer exists. Go and find out if there's any other shows and episodes that you want to listen to yourself. Go and dig into the feed in your podcast app of choice. And as always, thank you so much for joining me. Please check out Captivate.fm for your hosting needs and your podcasting needs. And until the next time, never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.